Good morning, sisters. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to today's session. We have with us again for this week Professor Elsa. Um, she will be talking to us on the UN Permanent Forum and the other international bodies. Um, and to begin, I would like to invite Sister Winnie to kindly give us her invocation.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. For today, I wanted all of us to take a moment to just pause before we begin this session and reflect on not just the sessions that have been, but also reflect on the opportunities that we've had. The people who've come to speak to us, who've taken time to come and speak to us, who have shared their knowledge, their experience, but also the opportunity for us to be here in this moment right now, and give gratitude for having that opportunity to be here, and give gratitude to our families who support us. Give gratitude for FIMI that has given us this space to come together and learn. Give gratitude for those who've gone before us, for those who laid the foundations that we are now currently enjoying the fruits of. As we keep learning about all those people who came before and all those the sacrifices they made, the strides they took. They were pioneers at a time when Indigenous peoples no one was listening to Indigenous peoples, and now we have a voice and we have a space. And so just take time. Today I'm taking time to be grateful for those people, and to be grateful that I'm able to be the person I am today, and being able to contribute how I'm contributing because of the people who came before me, and also taking time to think about the people who will come after me. And so the impact of the work that I do for the next generation. And so if we could just take time to give a word of thanks, of gratitude to those people, and to people who've given you space, not just here, but space in other places, back in your community, in the organizations that you're working in. To be thankful for them, because many times we take many things for granted. Actually, we take many things for granted because we think it's normal, or it's or it's deserved. But really, for me, I think it's a gift. A gift that we should embrace and appreciate and wholeheartedly, care for it. And when the time comes, we're able to gift it to someone else, so that we can keep the knowledge flowing, so that other people can keep learning from us. Other people can keep, especially those who don't have space or don't have opportunities like we do, can learn from us. And I think this has also come from, in previous sessions when we learn about a session and then someone says, well, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. That's great. We're hearing so many things for the first time. And so take those building blocks and build your community, build on your work, build on your advocacy, build on something that will affect not just this generation, but the generations to come in a positive way. So I'm also grateful for all of you. I'm grateful that you're able to be here with us. I'm grateful for Professor Elsa, who's also here with us, for Joy, for all the academic advisors, or Cecilia, the FIMI team who's here now, supporting the school, for the interpreters as well. I'm just grateful for all of you, and And I am also extending my gratitude to all of you at this time before we begin. And so I wish you a good session today. And I hope that it can be one that we will learn a lot of things. So thank you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Sister Winnie. Really beautiful thoughts to leave us with for the end of the week. Thank you so much, Sister Winnie. Welcome, Professor Elsa. I am really sorry you had to wait a little for all of us. My apologies. But we can begin now, Professor. Over to you.
Thank you, Joy, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And thank you, dear Winnie, for starting our seminar with such words that I think make us all feel stronger, because we are stepping on stepping stones and steps that others have created and strengthened. And it is very inspiring to remember that. And, I want to start also just following up from Winnie to say that I feel that Indigenous women live on very strong crossroads, because it's the crossroad of the Indigenous peoples movement, the crossroad of the women's movement, and the crossroad of the human rights movement. So you are stepping on three already important, and others, we can think of others, but I'm just thinking of three that are immediate. And I think there is a lot of strength, plus what Winnie said about the ancestors that did all this. We don't start from scratch. So that's great to know that. So today I appeared here an hour earlier because New York has changed time. And then, since I could see nobody except the technical staff of FIMI, I was, after some time, after 40 minutes of waiting, my husband said, maybe Guatemala time has not changed. So I Googled it and I saw that Guatemala had not changed. So I want to say that for this reason, because I was not aware of this, I have another commitment after, so I will be able to be with us for 2 hours, but I think it will be adequate the time for us to cover. So today, we are talking about the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and other international bodies, with various questions next to that I will read out, beautiful title. And I want to say that I will focus today on the Permanent Forum mostly. I will not make it into this endless description of bodies, because you will have other seminars that will cover that. For example, on development and others. And also, I'm going to give a seminar at one point on the complaints procedures for human rights to international human rights bodies. So on that occasion, I'm going to speak about the others. But the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues is allowing us, not only because it's the highest Indigenous related body at the UN, but because you will also, if you have not come already, you will be coming already. And what we say, the things that I want to present to you about the Permanent Forum can only be used as also be used as tools for other bodies. It's our analysis that matters and how we approach it. So I would like, before I start with a PowerPoint, I wanted to ask, we have, as part of our title today, we say, what did we achieve? This question, this basic question. And I want to ask, there are here 4 questions in our title. And I would like to ask, if any of you, what did we achieve? If you want to offer a thought, I would like a thought for each question, and then we can go in, and go into deeper depths, So, and what did we achieve? Maybe you have not gone for 10 years continuously to the permanent forum or something else, but you have heard things, not just at this seminar, but also from your elders. And also, what we have achieved is not just at the international level, although we achieved huge things at the international level. But from your own experiences, achievements. And the achievements are the result of struggles. They don't just come out as flowers on a plant, So would somebody like to raise her hand or just speak out and say, what did we achieve? You don't have to give 100 points. Give one. What did we achieve? What have we done after all these almost 50 years of international struggles, and of course, many more before at local and national level? Would anybody like to volunteer a little thought? You can raise your hand or just open the mic. Yes, Elizabeth.
Hola, muy buenos días.
Hello, good morning from Mexico. We're just starting our day, so good morning, everyone. I think that we have had many achievements. There's still challenges, of course, but I believe that we can center on those perhaps small moments or things, because they're also very important for us as peoples, but also as Indigenous women. Especially, I would like to comment that Mexico, at the beginning, made great progress in 94, 95. Formally, constitutionally, we were recognized as a plurinational nation, because a multinational, rather, or plurinational state, because we have various nations with different cultures, different ways of living, different ways to conceive our life. So that was very important at the national level, but I think that has an impact at the local level. Something important also is that we can now speak our languages officially. There are challenges indeed still, but at least we do have within special Indigenous educational programs in our country the ability to use our languages. Also, it's very important that we can recognize our land regiments, our land structures that in Mexico were more of communal, collective structure, and that's recognized. And I think that's great progress. Some of the problems we've had, obviously, as we've said before, is that within our land, our territories, what do we have to base our existence, the defense of our way of life? Because the land is what maintains us, is what gives us the opportunity to subsist, to exist. So those are special points, and I think that now are recognized as very important achievements. And we're now talking about political participation of Indigenous women, which is also great. In Mexico, we talk about justices, not just one justice, not the state or Western type of justice. We talk about other kinds of justices. We realize that there are many ways of doing things, and our peoples have their own ways and their own mechanisms to bring about justice. And justice for women, especially, has strengthened us because the state doesn't know these mechanisms. And we have put on the table the dialogue of the intercultural perspective, besides the human rights perspective, the gender justice perspective. And this helps us analyze everything through our contexts. So that's all, those points I wanted to mention. Thank you.
You made a whole list of many things, and many things stay in mind. And what I wanted to, I was also impressed that you stressed immediately the small things, because the small things are not small, they're big things, because they accumulate and they become a wave of political change, you know, of thinking change, philosophical change. And also how you stressed the plural of the word justicia. It's justicias. So very good. Thank you so much for the contribution. Doris, you have your hand up.
Good evening from the Philippines. For me, the UN Permanent Forum was able to give us indigenous peoples a specific space in the United Nations to be able to voice out our issues, so that people all around the world would be able to listen to us. And the UNPFII is also a space wherein it gives us the voice, like I said, the voice to be able to speak, and then it recommends those issues to the different bodies and the different committees. So the mere fact that we have this space to be able to voice out those issues, that is already a big thing for everyone, for all the indigenous peoples in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doris. And the indigenous voice is very strong at the Permanent Forum. Indeed, very well said. In order not to, I don't want to finish this discussion before I start a presentation, but there is the next question that is kind of provocative. What could we have done better? So this is a kind of self-searching question, you know, to think. When we say we, it's not a personal thing, right? It's about the indigenous peoples movement that is at international level many years back, 5 decades. So what could we have done better? Do any of you have any insights that you would like to share? What could have been better? It's not indispensable, but it's good. This is a seminar mode, you know, that we put ourselves in a safe space to think if we have ideas about that. You can raise your hand or just open your mic and share a thought. We have done many things fantastically, I have to say. I know that. But anyway, I don't want to get us stuck on this. If you think about it as I'm moving to the next questions, you can raise hand or open mic. The other question is, two other questions. What have we learned from these efforts, achievements, or challenges, whatever? And what strategies worked? You know, what were the things that opened doors, what were the keys, you know? What were the strategies that worked? Anybody on any of these questions, you know? What could we have done better? What have we learned? What strategies worked? Just a little opening. Yes, Doris. Thank you.
I think one of the strategies that really worked was what we have been hearing for the last sessions, the coming together of the indigenous peoples, having them, the collective lobbying um, at the UN was very important. And also, I think as we are doing now, we are trying to like amplify the voice of indigenous peoples in all the different spaces, even in the digital world. Like nowadays, in the social media, we have so many of us sharing the different events that are happening centered centered on indigenous peoples. That's really important. And then the coming together of many professionals, not only indigenous peoples, but also the different actors who are supporting indigenous peoples, has been really important in amplifying our voices.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doris. And I have heard so many times, Anima, I see you are there. Many times I have heard Indigenous leaders say that this space, the Permanent Forum or the UN Expert Mechanism on Indigenous Issues, these are spaces that are friendly to us, where we also manage to get some strength from each other, because these are bodies meant for Indigenous rights. And Indigenous peoples add, and they say, because whenever we go to the other fora, whether it is on climate change or on whatever, it's always a battle. But we manage to feed ourselves, our souls, our mind, our solidarities, when we go to the Permanent Forum. So what you said, this getting together, Doris, and the collective lobbying, the collectivity, it creates a collectivity, a family, this atmosphere, totally. And Anima, would you like to share?
Yes, hello everyone. Good evening. I think collectively about all the questions that you have asked, I just wanted, to share my personal experience throughout the journey of so far, whatever sessions we have attended. Initially when this started for me, it was a very positive note, and I was very excited that what is the school going to offer me. So UN is a platform. Definitely, we all want to know the mechanism. And for me, I always say that coming from a very small state, a very small place, getting to know a lot of mechanism, I think I'm just touching the basic. I'll be very honest with you. A lot of things, it goes over on top of my head. So I'm still trying to collect the bits, I think. So I'm just sharing my personal experience, because initially I started with a very high note. In between, I felt a little lost, because I think, we were not getting much time for studying because of our other engagement. So, but then when professors and the other speakers comes and share out that personal experience, that they have been working in the UN, and this is how it is, why the process takes time, and how very passionately and with patience we have to push it collectively. I think slowly that is something that I understand now, that when you are putting things collectively, it will take time though, but then it will fall into places. So I'm very happy, the whole transition for my personal learning, I'm quite happy that I'm getting to learn a lot of things. So I think this is what my personal experience that I want to take with me.
Anima, thank you. This is very important what you say, but also, because you are a young leader also, and it's normal to be more impatient. That's okay. You can push the elders as well. But I have been impressed also hearing elders who are older than me, if that is possible, right? And have been in the movement, from the very, very beginning, Indigenous leaders. And they are so proud of what has been achieved. And they say, this has been very quick. So it's, in other words, for these big historic changes to happen, they don't happen like this, but they put it in long perspective. They say, look, if you think about it from the moment of colonization, for example, how much we have achieved, they say, you know. So it's very interesting, you know, this because also to add that the indigenous, one of the strengths of the indigenous movement is the fact that for a long time it has kept its strength, has been committed to doing it, and is doing it strategically. Not all movements, if we compare social movements, are like this. So this, what Doris was saying before about creating the collectivity, and you mentioned, Anima, you know, that takes time to create, and it's precious once it's created. You know, it's like a treasure in a trunk that is kept there in the soul, you know. I see a hand without a name. It says iPhone XSM. I don't know who it is, but please take the floor. Maybe it's not. I don't know who it is, my friends. Juliana. No, Juliana. Juliana. You have the floor.
Ay, lo siento mucho que a veces se me olvida.
I am so sorry. Sometimes I forget to change the name. Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity that you and others have given us to get to know about the entire process of the Indigenous movement. It motivates us. It has an impact on us. We can see that is not easy. And it hasn't been easy to listen to how it all happened, sometimes without financing. The struggles, even starting with the funds, it's been hard. And for Indigenous peoples, the financial part is difficult because it's not easy for us to mobilize because of lack of funds. But those gaps have been overcome and a lot has been achieved. I also wanted to recognize that the knowledge that our elders have is extremely important to transmitting that knowledge to our youth. That has allowed us to continue. Many that were there are not here anymore, but that legacy continues from generation to generation, and that is part of our culture, to transmit that knowledge, that struggle, knowing where we come from, who we are, and where we're going, has allowed us to continue the struggle. Also, one of the aspects that I think we've seen over the years participating in different spaces, and that is that each one has a different agenda: climate change, diversity, the permanent forum, development. And I think that although it's difficult, it's important to try to unite our agendas, because everything is linked, everything is interrelated. Nothing works in isolation. I may be wrong, but I have seen that there is perhaps some disconnection in that aspect. There's an effort, obviously, to connect agendas, but I think we need to continue pushing for common agendas, because the struggle at the end of the day is the same. We're not different. We all fight for the same things. Thank you so much.
Because what you say about the different agendas, but in reality, after you speak to each other, you realize, and that was obvious when we were drafting the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples for 25 years. It became obvious because Indigenous peoples are such diversity, right? Different issues, but also common. I mean, the fact that Indigenous peoples managed to create these under the Declaration, right? The articles of the Declaration, the common issues and the common solutions, you know, because they put them in human rights terms, right? But this is exactly what happened. And when I was at the UN earlier, you know, a younger person, I was thinking that if we take 50 Indigenous leaders that don't know each other and we give them 2 days or 2 hours actually, or half a day. And we tell them, come up with a common agenda now. They would come up with the basics of the declaration. And, because the declaration is like our sacred book, so to speak, But it is so. They will speak about self-determination, governance, all this, lands, territories, and resources, culture, all this. So yeah, this was a very good, thank you, Juliana, for the comment. So my friends, if I can do that, I see that dear Joy and the FIMI friends have put me under share screen. It means I can share my screen, right, Joy? Yes, I can share it, so I don't need to bother anybody. So I can share my screen then and speak about the permanent forum. And is it visible? Is it okay? Okay, let me see. It's visible, right? Okay.
It's visible.
Okay, thank you very much. So I am presenting to you of course, it's descriptive, but it's analytical and critical, helping us analyze what is happening, right, after the basics. So today we present the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which is about specialized and focused international policymaking with Indigenous peoples, not without them, but with. So the questions are, why was the Permanent Forum created? What is the Permanent Forum's mandate and membership? How does the forum interpret its mandate and conduct its work? Because interpretation is crucial. Remember that word. What is the role of the various actors that are at the forum? States, Indigenous peoples, UN, and other intergovernmental agencies. So in addition to the members of the forum, of course. And please be critical also in your questions and comments, right? So the Permanent Forum is a body of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, of the United Nations. So why such a body? And it is the advocacy of Indigenous peoples that pushed, first of all, for a permanent UN body. That's why you have the word Permanent Forum, as compared to the Working Group on Indigenous Populations that historically, was established, started in 1982 and ended in 2005. So, but it was not a permanent body. And that working group was renewed only annually. In other words, it was very fragile politically, as a result of which, my friends, we forget sometimes, for 2 years in the 80s, it was pushed out and was not allowed by the Americans, basically, to hold its sessions. But so Indigenous people wanted a permanent UN body really established with a strong mandate. Second reason, they wanted a body at a high level as compared to the Working Group on Indigenous Populations that was low in the UN's hierarchy of bodies. Third, they wanted a substantive mandate that would cover all aspects of Indigenous people's lives, right? And that would have specific practical results. I remember Indigenous people saying, we've had enough of just words, we want actions. And so we want a body that will create these actions. And fourth, they wanted a body where Indigenous peoples and states would sit at a level of parity with states, okay? That's very important. They wanted an equality, at least in the visible spaces of the Permanent Forum. So, as a result, the Permanent Forum was established by a resolution of the Economic and Social Council in the year 2000, Resolution 2000/22, and its mandate is to discuss Indigenous issues related to and all these areas, right? Development, culture, environment, education, health, and human rights, of course. And what is the Permanent Forum supposed to do? It's supposed to provide expert advice and recommendations on indigenous issues to the to its parent body, to the Council, as well as to the UN system. And then it's supposed to raise awareness and to promote the integration, awareness about indigenous issues, right? We have to tell the world to wake up to our issues and promote the integration and coordination of activities related to indigenous issues within the UN system. And also to prepare and disseminate information on indigenous issues. So every year, there is a 2-week annual session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues that takes place in New York. The membership is unique, and it has never been repeated since the forum was created. It is unprecedented. So it's 16 members, expert members. 8 of them are nominated by states, and 8 are nominated directly by indigenous organizations in their regions. Who are participating as observers? State participants or intergovernmental organizations. For example, the European Union, the Organization of American States, they also participate. Indigenous peoples organizations, of course, and non-governmental organizations in consultative stages with Economic and Social Council participate. And very importantly, the Economic and Social Council, when it established the forum, it said that indigenous organizations will participate according to the same practice as we had at the Working Group on Indigenous Populations, which did the amazing thing, really exceptional, from the moment of 1983 to allow direct participation of indigenous peoples, actually even not having consultative NGO status, because indigenous peoples were also and are participating as direct governments of their peoples and their communities. Of course, there are some indigenous organizations. FIMI is one, very important, International Indian Treaty Council, and several others. But also what is tremendously powerful and empowering is the fact that indigenous peoples can participate also directly. So in the annual sessions of the Permanent Forum, over 1,000, 1,500 indigenous representatives or persons in general participate, and that includes representatives of about 35 UN and other intergovernmental organizations and mechanisms. And so what is happening also visually, you see it, those of you that have been there, you see it, is that there are ways in which it is extremely visible that indigenous people sit in the room alongside states. There is even, and we had to struggle a lot, I want you to know these things because we are in seminar mode, to create this visual equality and balance in the room. We had to struggle because states were not used to that. They felt that only states would be on the floor, and intergovernmental organizations, and indigenous peoples would be in the galleries, right? Up there. But no, they are not sitting there. They are sitting alongside states. And this is really revolutionary, I'm saying here, the word revolutionary, because otherwise states are the only ones that can nominate experts, and only states can sit on the floor, right, in the prestigious area of the conference room. So the next question is, policy recommendations to whom? To whom does the Permanent Forum send its recommendations? To whom do indigenous peoples want to emit recommendations? Because of course, what indigenous peoples recommend also find their ways into the recommendations of the Permanent Forum. So according to the original resolution 2000/22, the recommendations of the forum are addressed to the UN system through the Council. The forum makes many recommendations annually to the agencies of the UN and to the Economic and Social Council. And what is the practice that is very important also politically and symbolically for you? The Economic and Social Council does not have to approve one after the other by vote or whatever, the recommendations of the forum. So they stand on their own, these recommendations. And therefore, as soon as the forum finishes, then the Secretariat can send them as fresh, recommendations of the Permanent Forum for implementation to the agencies of the UN. Secondly, the forum does make recommendations to states, although it doesn't say so in the resolution. That's why I told you this is a critical presentation of the forum and its workings, right? So the forum does make recommendations to the states. And third, it makes recommendations also to indigenous peoples and to the private sector and to academia. So in other words, this is part, my friends, of the expanding the workings of a body of the UN, in this case the Permanent Forum, through interpretation, a creative interpretation of the mandate, to which, of course, very much indigenous representatives and forum members, of course, and others contributed. So now I am presenting here a slide with square brackets, some square brackets. It's very interesting for me. That's why I told you I'm presenting to you a critical presentation, of the forum. So what you see in brackets here are practices that existed for a moment by the Permanent Forum, and then they were closed down. They were not done anymore. And for example, in-depth dialogue with UN agencies used to be done, it's not done. In-depth dialogue with states, same thing. Conducting country visits at the invitation of governments, same thing. However, what is happening is conducting visits to agencies to promote integration of indigenous peoples' issues. Another square bracket below. Issuing public statements, for example, on gross human rights violations that had been issued about Colombia, Bolivia, the Philippines. Not done now. Receives reports from states, no longer from states, only from the UN system and indigenous peoples. If you go to the documentation of the Permanent Forum this year, you will see that. It's good that we have many from the UN system, but we don't have one state. And another thing that it does, no square brackets here, it mandates members of the forum to do research on specific topics of significance to indigenous peoples. And also, it holds region-specific discussions. Why, dear friends, are these other practices not happening? Again, you have to think as participants in these processes, and not just these, but this is very significant because it's the indigenous focused body, the highest body in terms of hierarchy. It is because, of course, there is resistance on the part of states, even if they don't say it publicly in a body like the forum with such huge presence of indigenous peoples. They might not say it, but it comes out, indirectly. Or sometimes members of the forum that may not say these things, the government nominated ones, might have some resistance to some of these things. Or some people, even secretariats, might say, we don't have money. You know, when there is will, you find money if you want to do a visit to a country. It's not that. So we have to be, as political people and as advocates, we have to be alert to practices that we find positive, not to be rolled back. In fact, I will add that in the strategies of Indigenous peoples over the decades, I see the smarts of Indigenous peoples, including, you know, they don't just sit to be very pleased with all these achievements that they have, but they always push forward, because if you don't push forward, they will push you backward and you might lose some positive achievements. So I'm just saying that because I want to be analytical and present a critical presentation of the Permanent Forum. So in the declaration itself, we have the only reference that we have to a body of the UN is to the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in Article 42 of the Declaration. It says this: the UN, its bodies, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and specialized agencies, including at country level and states, shall promote respect for and full application of the provisions of this declaration and follow up the effectiveness of this declaration. So in the year 2005, the Permanent Forum analyzed this article because it wanted to decide how it would carry out its duty under Article 42. And among other things, and it at that point, and for some time, it put a permanent item on its agenda called implementation of the declaration, which was taken out later. Again, I just wanted you be alert to these things, to these changes, because they are real when they happen. So, among other things, and I put it on your in your bibliography, the Permanent Forum in 2009 adopted a very important general comment on Article 22. And why is it important? In addition to saying how the forum will carry out its mandate under Article 42, it spoke about the legal validity of the declaration. You must have heard in several people refer to our declaration, saying, oh, it's a declaration and it's not a treaty, and therefore it's not binding. And I wanted to say that as somebody who has studied and also teaches international law, human rights from an international law aspect, this is not precise. It doesn't mean that anything that is a declaration is not binding, because declarations that are very important and that have taken many years to ferment, like our declaration, right? 25 years in the making it was. It captures, it crystallizes customary international law, and also it puts clearly in black and white the interpretation of other norms of human rights and international law that exist in treaties. And if we take, for example, the issue of equality on the basis of sex, for example, male, female, or other, this is a fundamental principle that you find in almost all treaties, right? Including especially human rights treaties. If you put this, since we have elements in the declaration, it doesn't mean that they are not binding because this is a declaration. So what the forum said is that the declaration is not a treaty. I have it in bold here. And accordingly, it doesn't have the binding force like a treaty. But this does not mean that this non-treaty character of the declaration means that the declaration is without any legally binding effect, said the forum. So as we moved through the years, the forum decided that it now is the moment, they said, to move from law in books to law in practice, in action. And that's what the declaration is about, and Article 42 is about. And I have put also square brackets in the following things that I will let you, my friends, enjoy yourselves or not enjoy, actually. These are things that used to be done and are not done because, not enough, how can I say, resistance and persistence on the part of permanent forum members, I don't know who else, and of course the indigenous representatives, so we wouldn't lose these practices. The next point is about the interagency support group on indigenous issues that was created in the year 2002, at that time by the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And now it is composed of about 40 agencies, 40, huge number of agencies, UN system and non-UN system intergovernmental agencies. And the job of the Interagency Support Group on Indigenous Peoples Issues is to support and help the indigenous related bodies of the UN, the Permanent Forum, the expert mechanism, the special rapporteur, and to support them also politically and on substance. So we come to the sessions of the forum, 10 days per year in April, May. The recommendations are adopted by consensus. I want to explain the term. Consensus means not unanimity. It means that people can agree on certain recommendations, not because they love them, but as we say, they can live with them. Some of them might love them, but if there is one member of the Permanent Forum that really does not want a recommendation, it will not go as part of the recommendations of the Permanent Forum. It would break the consensus, okay? And recommendations are policymaking oriented in the form of advice, right? And they give action-oriented advice to the system, to the international system, but as I told you, also to indigenous peoples organizations, private sector, academia, and the various ideas that have come from the caucuses and the indigenous presentations find their way as part of the recommendations. The recommendations are in all the mandated areas of the Permanent Forum. And as I said before, they can be addressed to one UN agency or to the whole UN system. But they can also be addressed to states, indigenous organizations, academia, private sector. So what is happening throughout the year? Throughout the year, various consultations take place. A lot of work. In other words, I wanted to say here that the Permanent Forum is not just an event. It's not like going to a theater tonight or to a show, right? It's something that is a whole cycle, right? We have to think about it cyclically coming and covering the whole year. So various consultations take place among indigenous networks and caucuses, among agencies of the UN, among forum members, and so on. Documentation is prepared by all these actors, by indigenous peoples, by agencies, by Permanent Forum members who have undertaken to do studies. And also UN agencies and governments pursue the implementation of recommendations of the forum. Not all of them, it's impossible, because in policy, as one of you, I don't know if it was Doris saying that, or Anima, it takes time for the policy machinery, to become activated to operationalize many recommendations. They cannot operationalize 100 recommendations every year, states. They don't have this capacity. Also, during the year, right, states can adopt policies, review their legislation, and see what is needed, maybe to drop some law that if it has discriminatory aspects, or to add a law that would be positive for Indigenous people's lives. They prepare reports of the Permanent Forum if they wish. Many other initiatives take place, especially by Indigenous persons and organizations. For example, there has been an Indigenous Mayors Network in Latin America. Indigenous Parliamentarians initiative has taken place. The Permanent Forum members and the Secretariat also go into an activity throughout the year to push the recommendations of the Permanent Forum to be implemented. They network, they promote awareness, they prepare documents for the Permanent Forum. So Indigenous peoples, of course, also participate in the deliberations of the forum. They push the implementation of these recommendations. They push the states to support the Permanent Forum in various ways, including by giving contributions to the various funds that we have at the UN on Indigenous issues. The first week, so if you are preparing, if you are going to come to the Permanent Forum, some of you may be coming, you have to put your name, the name of your organization with a speakers list for the first week, because the second week will be mostly dialogues and closed sessions. The way that the Permanent Forum has changed its mode of work, the second week is more dialogues, like more informal and closed sessions. So the first week, you have to sign up to speak, to find an opportunity to speak. And the duration of each speech, I'm sure you have heard it already from other presenters, 3 minutes. This means that if your speech is more than 3 minutes, after 3 minutes, the microphone is closed, is turned off. So you might be speaking and nobody will hear you except the person next to you. It is quite harsh. It was not like that before at the UN. But they use this 3-minute rule also for states and for agencies of the UN. What does it mean to be effective at the Permanent Forum? First of all, understand the agenda. You read it. You don't just come for a show. You come, you have spent your own time taken away from family and work to come here, and you have to prepare, in order to have as best a result as possible. You have to understand the agenda. You have to prepare 3-minute interventions. When you have to keep yourself in the room, because if they call you and you are not there, you miss your opportunity to speak. So you have to stay in the room. You have to read calmly and not too fast, because so you have to plan very well and write up your statement. You have to caucus, go be part of the caucuses, the women's caucus, the youth caucus, the regional caucuses, etc. You can also be a mentor to other people that might be coming for the first time or might not have gone through any training like you have. There are side events, my friends, for networking and learning and sharing and giving solidarity. And when we have, before the COVID thing, and it will pass, I suppose, soon, about more than 100 side events take place in 2 weeks. So this becomes a huge conference. It's not only the plenary session of the forum, but also all the side events organized by Indigenous peoples, states, agencies, and so on. And it's good to stick together, we say here, help each other, monitor this, how the session is going, and not be absent because you want to impact the final report. You want to speak to the members of the forum and make sure, approach your members and make sure that that important recommendations for you are included in the report of the forum. Also, you distribute and post your statements online. For example, during the sessions, we have the presence of DOCIP, Documentation Center of Indigenous Peoples. You make sure that DOCIP has your speech and will post it on their website, but also you can post your speech on your own other websites that are available to you. Discuss your issues with delegates of states. What we have seen, and of course, permanent forum members and agencies, what we have seen since 1982, when the working group was started meeting, is that states that will not speak to Indigenous peoples at home, they will speak to them when they come to the permanent forum or at that time to the working group, because it shows you the strength, of the international environment. And we say here, remember that it's worthwhile. It's a discussion we started before at the beginning of our seminar, that we are here for the long run because we are trying to make big changes. We try to get the declaration implemented, and we want to make people think differently and do, policy and create societies that are different and with justice. I have this slide which I consider important. What is a successful outcome of the forum for me? We can ask ourselves, right? We spend all this time, this money to be at the forum. What is it that makes it successful for us? Of course, if you manage to reach the point in the speakers list to speak, yes, it's successful. You like this because your actual voice was heard. Second, of course, if you can get your recommendation or the substance of your recommendation accepted by the forum and included in its final report, that's a success. Other signs of success: drawing the attention of a government through statements or other advocacy that you undertake, right? You have to, because government states have to be alerted to that and be pushed to take action. So if you draw the attention, that's a good thing. Next point, raise awareness about your issues by organizing side events or participating in those events of others that others organize. That's another good sign, that you have achieved something. Advocating with a UN agency. You advocate with them. They're all present there. About 35 of them are present. So you try to push them, convince them to take action in your country. You can also invite a forum member at a conference you will have in your country, because this way you can have it, it can be an NGO conference, an academic conference, a combination, whatever, a policy conference. If you bring a forum member there, you create a political and other profile that is in your favor. You give profile to your issues. Next point that creates a successful session is to learn from each other. And you give and you receive solidarity. And so, as we said before, what we do at the international level is try to change how the world thinks and behaves to Indigenous peoples and more generally for social justice. And last but not least is this beautiful phrase that is repeated by senior Indigenous leaders: keep the moral high ground. This has been a reality, but also a strategy of Indigenous peoples. They realized that in order to win hearts and minds, you have to speak in the name of justice and reality, you know, and justice and, you know, a better world, right? In other words, to say why you are right on the basis of principles. So these are elements that I consider, you know, compose. We can think of more, you know, and you can add. Now I will open up for our discussion. But a successful participation to the permanent forum on these issues has many elements. It's not just whether you manage to reach that point on the list of speakers and be called to speak, or your exact text of 3 lines of a recommendation was put into the report of the forum. And last, it's not last really, is apply what you learned and share what you learned when you go home. And this is from a meeting that was held in 2014 in the Francisco Magu Community Council in the Otomí in central Mexico, which was a moment, you know, of briefing, debriefing, sharing with community what we have learned at these international fora. And now a happy picture where women, as you see, play a good role. It was 2009, Permanent Forum was was invited by Bolivia to hold its precessional meeting. And among other things, near where we met, outside La Paz, was the village of the foreign minister, and they created, you know, a traditional welcome for us, which included a little dance. So you can see members of the forum that are dancing with the local community. I will stop sharing this the screen, and I told Joy if she wishes she can share the PowerPoint with you. But I would like to now pause and hear your, you know, your questions, your comments, your experiences also at the Permanent Forum, and how, you know, whether you, some of these, also this critical presentation, critical meaning, you know, with commentary, right? Nothing is given. The Permanent Forum is not a piece of furniture, right? That stays the same in my apartment. It's a living body, my friends, you know? It has life in it, and we all breathe life to it. And we have to, because we care for it, because it's so important, we have to unload all the positives and watch that we don't lose the positives. We are not pushed backward. That was really my point in presenting some of these square brackets. So I stop here, and I invite you to share some thoughts before I go to another brief presentation. You can raise your hand or open your mic. Have any of, oh yes, Amina, go first. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Elsa. I'm so glad again. So this is the second session that we have with you. So I'm really thankful. You know, I think you bring out your own experience. So that's why it can be very easily, you know, we can absorb. So for me, because this is, I think, very serious things to know. Like if you're representing, you know, your own issues, your indigenous issues to the forum, one has to be like I think a very knowledgeable person who can really bring out the issues that we have in our Indigenous community. So I don't know, but I was just, while you're giving this session, I was just thinking that this is some serious stuff that we need to work on. And this class can be probably enhanced, like the second stage. I don't know if that is possible or not, but just because here we are all here, we are discussing, and we are okay to open up our minds. So I just wanted to put this question that, if there is a another serious rigorous next level or next stage where maybe our sisters would like to uh, come again and take more serious session, which can be more deep. Because I also felt that 3 months, though we are taking this class, sometimes because we are also busy in, I think, other works, somehow maybe we are not able to fully connect. But for some of us maybe who really want to take this more further, more seriously, if there is another level, maybe Fimi could think about this, or maybe another in another perspective, maybe we can think about this. So I'm not sure. I'm just putting up this question because this thought popped up in my mind, and I thought I should ask here. So another stage, another level of learnings, because these are so serious that we cannot just. I mean, within 3 months, we cannot just come out with this, and the mechanism is so deep and it's so vast that I think we need a really serious study about this to bring out our issues and come up with new ideas, because somehow the ideas and even the things that we have been talking are somehow similar in everywhere. But somehow, like, I don't know, if we know the subject better and more well, I think, I mean, we can do much better. That was something which just came in my mind. So that's all.
Thank you, Amina. It's not all, it's a huge thing what you raised, and I'm very glad you did. Because, I personally, when I try to present this, first of all, it's realistic. Because I'm speaking to leaders here, I want to be very frank. I don't want to beautify or just to be superficial or just academic in the bad sense of academic, No, I want to tell you the realities, because I want you to know that if one member of the forum, for example, disagrees with the recommendation, he or she will say so, it will not go in, that's consensus, and it will be in the closed meeting, and you will not know that broad, because they cannot do it, because if they are going to debate 100 recommendations in public with back and forth, we will not have time for the public. So they do this in private. So I want you to know these things. But what you raised, Anima, I think I feel are in two big areas. One is continuous learning, because learning has to be continuous, for you and me. It never stops. And yes, learning can continue in various settings, For example, just at Columbia, we have an annual summer, we call it International Summer Program on Indigenous Peoples' Rights and Policy. When it's in person, it's 2 weeks, all day, every day, with visit to an Indigenous community. When it is remote, it's 3 weeks, because you cannot be 7 hours on Zoom, you go crazy. That is one opportunity. When I give my classes at Columbia, it's twice a week, and I have 28 classes to deliver this everything, and every year we have Human Rights Advocates program at Columbia University, and some Indigenous persons come, also FIMI nominates, people spend the semester here. So there are ways just for Colombia, because there are other ways that you may have. For example, the Teba Foundation in Asia, I believe organizes as well some trainings. So there are just Indigenous community trainings. But the other big area that you are touching is strategy, Anima, I feel. In other words, it's very important, especially in Asia. You guys are well organized and you always have an annual preparatory meeting for the forum. If you manage to go there and flag what are the strategic points for the next session, because it takes strategy. For instance, for these items in square brackets that I gave you, I was thinking to myself, should I delete them from my PowerPoint because I had previous file? No, I will not delete them because it's a learning tool for you to see my square brackets. In other words, okay, maybe out of these practices that have been discontinued, I want to press, I want to advocate for practice X to continue something. And it's a strategy. There are some organizations, in particular, International India Treaty Council, I have to mention this, that every year we have an item that is called something like future work. I forget how we call it. And it is like an open kind of item to do your critiques in a good way, Okay, I noticed that the forum, blah, blah, no longer recognizes caucuses to give priority to caucuses for the speakers list. It's an example. There is a reason they did this. But if you want to change something, you use that moment to put yourself on the list of speakers and be this strategic and active, how can I say, critical thinker about the forum's ways of work. I just give you this so you know this, because this was a strategic question you asked. Women, for example, FIMI has used it as well. FIMI, for crucial issues of Indigenous women. So it's very good that you share that you shared your remarks and questions, very important. Both the continuous learning and the strategy. Yeah. Any other colleague? Regina.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, and good evening, sisters. And correct me if I'm wrong. So, on my understanding, that the UN for the Indigenous Peoples Permanent Forum is like just a basic. Like I didn't don't appreciate the history, but however, I think that we need to enhance the participation of Indigenous peoples. Like Indigenous people could engage directly and equally with member states to ensure rights are protected and concerns are heard. We need to support the absolute leadership of the United Nations to address indigenous human rights. So it's still the challenge. It is very challenging since the permanent forums continues to be the subsidiary bodies. So is it possible for us to fight for so we can be more like the UN permanent forum is not just like the subsidiary body, because we still don't have enough a voice like in those bodies where decisions are made in the United Nations and the states. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. A very important question. And that's the one strategy that Indigenous peoples do have, and it's very good. And what is that? Indigenous peoples have understood that having the legitimacy of numbers is very important. We have to be there in those meetings of the Permanent Forum and others of interest, number one, because it matters a lot to be there. For example, if you compare, I don't want to theorize much, but if you compare with the issue of minorities at international level, which has become a different both political and legal agenda. The minorities never had a global minority movement. No comparison to the Indigenous who have had and have, and I can foresee it will be very strong for a long time. And so the numbers matter a lot. To be present matters so much. Your very presence, how you will speak, how you will present yourself, the fact that you're in the room to speak to the state, to speak to the agency, to speak to whoever, it will continue to matter. But the other thing where the indigenous movement has been very strong has been pushing what you alluded to, the participation issue forward. In other words, so they don't push us backward, but also for substance. In other words, the enhanced participation of indigenous peoples in other bodies, not only at the Permanent Forum and the expert mechanism on indigenous rights, but also in the General Assembly of the United Nations and other bodies of concern where issues are discussed that matter to indigenous peoples. And this was one of the recommendations that indigenous peoples pushed and got in 2014 at the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, as you know. So, and it's still, I think that Raja Devashish Roy is going to speak to you about that when he speaks about self-determination. But I'm very pleased and I admire the movement for its strategy, Regina, for having pushed forward and saying, hey, it's not enough. Don't just put us in on a frame, just Permanent Forum, wonderful as it is. No, because we want to be at the General Assembly when climate change is discussed and what the other is discussed. We want to be there. So it's still going on because, as you can understand, you probably know, there is, of course, some resistance of states, right? They're a bit uncomfortable allowing non-state actors to participate in their inner sanctum, because the General Assembly is the most global body of the UN with very strict protocol who participates. So imagine, it's very, very, creating new rules for indigenous peoples. Big deal. Still going on, okay? Still going on in a good way, And this April, we will have more discussions. Yeah, it will continue. I'm very eager to see, also hoping that some people will manage to come, because I know there are visa issues, for coming to the Permanent Forum from outside. Okay, thank you, Regina. Any other comments, my friends? I have something to share with you, if I could. Can I do that? I don't see a hand now, so I'm going to do this very quickly to add, and I'm going to share my screen, because what I wanted to share with you is this this idea, of indigenous women and group rights, because whoever of us, speaks broadly, has many contacts, and we advocate, we will meet this question. And so it's important. So why, and we will share the answers here. Why is the topic of women and human rights often seen as opposite to group rights? Discussion of the sensitivity of group rights for states. So states are afraid of the recognition of minorities or indigenous peoples because they feel that these discussions may undermine the state. They are fearing secession. This is like very on the DNA of states. It's existential fear, right? And because the liberal doctrine of human rights sees the individual as the ultimate holder of human rights, and it's not accepted by all that there are group rights, right? And these are reasons why, we meet with this question. And even with women's rights advocates who are not indigenous, we might meet these questions. So why do we discuss this? Because as I was telling you, I think in the first presentation I made to you, already since the Anti-Genocide Convention of 1948, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, a group has the right to exist as a group, right? So a group, this was the first group right, I stressed. And then there is a significance of women's rights are human rights campaign. I don't know if you, maybe some of you are too young to remember that, but in the World Conference on Human Rights in 1993 in Vienna, in the VDPA, Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, a big statement was made, a big slogan that became part, of what was adopted, that women's rights are human rights, whether they take place in the violations take place by public actors, state actors, or privately, because the state, for example, if women are abused by the men, their lovers or their husbands, or their brothers and fathers, there has to be, state action to protect the women, to prevent these crimes and protect the women. So I mentioned here the name of an author that I want you to know. Will Kimlicka is a Hungarian author who is a Canadian. His descent is Hungarian, but he deals a lot with group rights, minorities. He's not one of he's very interested in things indigenous, but he's not somebody who is focusing just on this. So he talks, instead of talking about group rights, he calls them group differentiated rights. And this raises the issue of cultural relativism versus universality of human rights. So you probably know this, that, for a long time, a fear of human rights specialists has been that, hey, we have some states that come out and say cultural rights are not really universal. They depend on what religion or what culture we have. So this became part of the big debate called cultural relativism versus universality of human rights. So I come back to Kimlicka, and he has a wording that I find interesting. That's why I'm sharing this thing. He says there are two group differentiated rights. He says external protections and internal restrictions. He says external protections are claims of a group that feels sensitive against the larger society. In the case of indigenous peoples, for example, collective rights, we call them, right? Land rights, language rights, self-determination or special representation rights, okay? These are external protections, he says. We need these in order for the group that has been marginalized and has experienced discrimination to be protected. And then he says there are also internal restrictions, meaning restrictions that the group places on its members, on its own members. And for Kimlicka, external protections are fine because we need them, but internal restrictions are not fine. And I put a question mark on that. And I ask, are all internal restrictions human rights violations? No, that would be a very absolute thing to say. Of course not. And we have, for example, something to make us think and compare are citizenship rights, right? If you are the citizen of a state, you have certain obligations and restrictions. You have to obey the laws, you have to pay taxes. In some countries, you have to do an army service, etc. Well, so internal restrictions, we are not always human rights violations. We have to be, to examine. So how are indigenous women's rights covered by the declaration? When we come to the issue of equality, right? Is the principle of non-discrimination enough? Is it enough? Think about these questions, maybe you can answer them after. What are the parameters between, or the limits, right, between indigenous women's individual rights and collective human rights? How are conflicts to be resolved between indigenous women's human rights and cultural affirmations of the collectivity, including some traditional practices? And how can indigenous women exercise and strengthen their human rights through culture, especially through respect of their cultural human rights? These are very big questions, a mouthful of questions. I'll come back to them. So when you go to the declaration and you look at Article 21, it says that states shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of elders, women, youth, etc., says the declaration. And then again, Article 22, special attention. These are the words, to the rights and special needs of, and then gives again, and women, right, in the implementation of the declaration. And then it says in paragraph 2 of Article 22, states shall take measures in conjunction with indigenous peoples to ensure that indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all forms of violence and discrimination. And then we come to the important Article 34, my friends, which says that indigenous peoples have the right to promote, develop, and maintain their institutional structures and their distinctive customs, traditions, procedures, and practices, and juridical systems or customs. And then I have highlighted, in accordance with internationally recognized human rights standards. What does this mean? It means that what all these practices, institutions, etc., of indigenous peoples, of the collectivity, they have to be carried out in accordance with international recognized standards. In other words, the human rights standards, the treaties we have, are a framework, because the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is a human rights declaration, and it was negotiated within the human rights framework. So it's regarding indigenous women in the declaration. Women assert their agency. Women are agents of change. For example, at the UN, in the UN operational agencies, it's well known that if you want to make a change in communities, in certain societies, right? Well, you focus on the women, because the women are agents of change. And according to the declaration, of course, and human rights law in general, indigenous women have both collective and individual rights. And I say here, indigenous women write their own histories. There is this beautiful report of FIMI, Global Study on Indigenous Women and Girls. I don't know if you have seen it or it has been shared with you. I will share 2 photographs also, and then go back to some questions. So this is a classroom at Columbia when our seminars take place in person. So that's how we would be. You see Hortensia here in her back, and Professor Barkan there speaking, and Elsa next to Barkan. So, and here you see from 2019, you see the group photograph that we took on the beautiful, in front of the beautiful monumental building of Colombia. Again, Hortensia here, Winnie over there, who else is here? Joe is there as well. So anyway, this is, when we get together, that's how we look. And I just want to say that even though we are doing this via Zoom right now, I feel that I am in the same room with you, exchanging. So I want to put up here some questions that I raised in case you would like to address them, or whether you would like to share other questions. The floor is yours. We have a little time. You can raise your hand, or you can just open your mic. I will stop sharing so that we can look at each other. Hello, hello. Okay. Please feel free, because this is I want to say this. There is this other discussion that is happening with mainstream feminism. Who makes change in communities where there is a feeling that the communities or this outside the communities, violate Indigenous women's rights, or women's rights for that matter. It doesn't have to be an Indigenous community. It could be a migrant community, a distinct community anyway, in a broader society. Oh my God, Cecilia. So nice to see you, Cecilia. It's my sister, Cecilia, who is here after becoming a mom. Oh my God, welcome. Oh my God, Cecilia.
Hi, Professor Elsa. Hi,
What
everyone.
a pleasure, my God. How is the baby?
He's sleeping now. Thank you very much. It's nice to see you too.
So nice, my dear. So
And
nice.
hear you.
Okay. So nice. So, my dear sisters, Cecilia is the person that has been running and organizing the global school, La Escuela Global, and she has been on maternity leave, so we have Joy helping out this year. Wonderful, wonderful sisters together. So I want to repeat, my friends, who is in the front seat of changes that need to take place in groups, right? Or in distinct groups, because they are distinct. They have their own particular culture, whether it is a broader culture, whether it's a religion, class culture, whatever it is, So what do you think? Because you are fighters, you have done that. I know that. And who are in charge, and or who should be in charge, and how to do it? Do you have any sense from your practice, from sharing, experiences with other members of the community, or your leaders, or your moms, or whatever, your grandmas? Who should it be? Should it be a UN agency? Doris.
Professor, I was just thinking about your second question about Indigenous women and equality. And then, is the principle of non-discrimination enough? I always hear, or I always read the phrase, Indigenous women are not are discriminated because they are women and they are Indigenous. So I think as regards that question, I think equality is not enough because we need to have that equity. In a sense that Indigenous women are more vulnerable. So I think they should have more, they be given more chances to have that equality because they are given less opportunities.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. This is very much actually the philosophy that is conveyed by Indigenous leaders in international fora. And if you look at the articles of the declaration that touch on women, they speak about focused measures, specific measures. And if you look, when we had the international decade, the second international decade of the world's indigenous peoples, they speak about focused measures. They have to be special. In other words, special in the sense that taking into account the injustice over and the systemic discrimination, over a long period of time. And that is a very important point. And that this point is also important, Doris, to explain to people so they don't feel that we are giving a gift to the Indigenous women. No, it's just the approach and the methodology, the philosophy has to be different in order for it to have real change, and create real equality, substantive equality, not just formalistic. Yeah, very well said, Doris. I see Elizabeth also raising her hand. We don't hear you, Elizabeth. We can't hear you.
Gracias, muy amable.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, in fact, something that our sister Doris said is reminding me that this is very important and that we've also, when we talk about rights, we have to realize what Elsa is emphasizing, that these rights are not privileges. And instead of something special or specific, it has to do with access. Indigenous women have to have the same access to our rights, our equal rights. And we have to understand that Indigenous women are in the framework of rights. As women and as members of Indigenous peoples, we have two legal frameworks that should be able to allow us to feel policies, public policies that are tangible, that allow us to have access to those rights. So Indigenous women are not receiving anything special, and we have to stop thinking that we have to be in the custody of someone else, or that someone else has to advise us because we don't have our own capacity. That's another one of the points that sometimes we encounter, and that we have to eradicate that view of Indigenous women as people who need. Now, of course, we need access to education, access to everything, but not just because we're women, and because all women deserve this access, but also because of our history of discrimination and racism. And I think we should talk about that as we discuss this as well.
Point, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. And I wanted to say, combining what you said, and I think Doris said, that I don't know if Doris used the word vulnerable. I think Doris, you did. We have to use as women also, and as Indigenous that you are, vulnerable because we are women, because we came out of the female sex or something. No, the human rights language that we use is rendered vulnerable, made vulnerable, in other words. So women are not vulnerable. They are rendered vulnerable by socio-political systems and economic, You can say about vulnerable for children because of their age, right? And they are very sensitive, both physically, little kids. But women and Indigenous peoples, adults in general, are rendered vulnerable there by the systems. Just this is a small thing, but it's human rights language, that helps us to say, as Elizabeth was saying before, we are not under this tutelage. You said, Elizabeth, no, we are not. You are not. You are, adult people with strength, and you go forward, and you have achieved amazing things that everybody marvels, actually. Any other comments? We have a couple of more minutes. Regina, you raise your head. And
Yes, thank you, Professor. So, like we Indigenous women, like we understood that the human right has no exception. Like, so it's not based on culture, tradition, or religion. There are no exception for human rights. However, there is some conception of culture have been placed in opposition to principle of universal human rights. So most commonly, the concept of cultural relativity has been used to justify violation of human rights or women's rights by designing abuses as cultural. So, and therefore beyond the legitimate reach of human rights. So my question is how we as Indigenous women negotiate the tension between the cultures and human rights. Thank you.
Regina, what a fantastic question you are asking. I must tell you that this has also tortured me for a very long time, and I ended up writing the first book on cultural rights because I got so upset that human rights people, specialists, people that have devoted their life, they were creating or not thinking, how can I say, analytically enough, and they were simply vilifying culture. How can you vilify culture since from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep in the evening, you constantly practice culture, from what you eat, what you wear, what language you speak, how you behave to your kid. I mean, culture is omnipresent, but unfortunately, there has been an oversimplification, I feel as well, and not deep thinking by especially law people who were at the beginning dealing with human rights, and they still deal with. But the law people, like I'm a law person, right? I studied law, but they are not equipped through her studies, let's put it that way, or practice to deal a lot with culture. Okay, so we have to fill it in. So the beauty, in my opinion, of women, there are many beauties, but one of the beauties, because they consider us that we are the main promote the culture reproducers, right? When the way we have a child, we raise the child, we pass on the language, the food, all this is part of culture. We are maintaining culture and so on. And my comment on that is very undermining, because I did that also with my mother, in a good way. I'm saying that, of course, my mother has passed away. That when we reproduce culture, whether it's to make a special bread or, put the hairs of our little girl together, as we recreate culture, we also slightly at times modify it. This is also a huge power that we have. Think about it. Whatever food, if the food I felt that my mom was making had some negative things, I'm gonna change it a bit, or what, etc. So we have power also by having our hands strongly in this, cultural maintenance. It means that we can also modify creatively. And and I think that's why all these, international agencies feel that if we can convince women, because you have to convince women if you want to make a change, if they haven't thought of it themselves, you have to convince them. If you convince them and they think, for example, that FGM is not a good idea to continue, and you have them on your side of this idea, they will create a special, also cultural ways in which, or little steps. Somebody spoke about the little steps that are very important steps. I know several stories about that, So I see this, as a profound tool, culture and creativity through culture, as a big tool and a very strong tool for women creating societal change that they wish to make. Not in the law of the books, but the societal, which is deep, It's the social customs, it's the ways we behave in the group. Do we have any other thoughts to share, questions to share? We have 5 more minutes. Yes, and this thing about who, yes, this question, who is in the front seat? Let's say there are women's issues or negative practices or negative things that Indigenous women experience. Who must be in the front seat of change for that? Does it have to be a UN agency? I say that with a little ironic smile, of course. Of course, I respect the UN, but we're talking about these profound changes. Does it have to be a church organization coming from outside? Who should it be? Who do you think is right to be in the front seat? Our community, Lucia Gomez. Yes, Lucia, it is the community, but also I see Pema wanting to say something. Pema?
Yeah, I have an additional question, but please continue.
Yeah, let's answer this for a second.
Mm.
Yes, it has to be your community, the community. And within the community is, of course, a community. But who should take the initiatives at best? The women, yes, Regina. It has to be the women. This thing, you know, of you alluded in your comments because you are leaders, you know, this thing that somebody will save the women, you know, so no, you don't do that. Meaning you can't really, because societal change is the deepest change. You have to change minds. It takes a lot to change culture. It's deep. It's not just words in a law. So yes, it is Indigenous women, and Indigenous women, I have seen amazing initiatives that I have admired so much, including through FIMI that I learned about these initiatives. Yes, Pema, please take the floor.
Yes. Now that we're discussing about Indigenous women and Indigenous culture and talking about how patriarchy has affected, I just wanted to share an experience. Me as an Indigenous youth, I see that the deep-rooted cultures of my community is a very progressive. Actually, our Indigenous cultures are very progressive, and it does not have that influence of patriarchy that we see in the mainstream society. But if we see the current trends in even in my own Indigenous community, we are kind of losing that our main core, our essential cultural practices, our essential values, and we are indeed being impacted. We're being influenced by the mainstream community, because of which sometimes I see such a drastic difference between what our cultures actually means and how we are practicing it. Like in my cultures, we
I don't hear you.
Custodians of our houses, they protect our household, they do our businesses, they do our traditional practices, they do traditional occupations. But because of but in some cases, I see that kind of patriarchal influence bring implications when we are practicing in our daily lives, when we are doing our daily chores, when we are.
You get a little interrupted by it, I understand.
Yeah. Am I audible right now?
Now, yes. Now, yes.
Yeah. So I see those kind of patriarchal influences in our daily lives. But when we talk about our pure Indigenous cultures, it is very progressive towards Indigenous women. So I just wanted to know that because we are also very in a lot of cases in Nepal, we are very lagging behind in terms of lagging behind in terms of intergenerational transfer of those essential values of our essential cultures, because of which the influences of mainstream community and non-Indigenous communities are being very heavily influencing our values and cultures. So I just wanted to know that how can we revive those deep-rooted Indigenous values that does supports Indigenous women, that does supports Indigenous men, that does supports Indigenous people of all gender, which is indeed present in our very pure culture that we have been able to save. But despite that, in our daily practices and in our daily lives, we are kind of being heavily influenced by the mainstream patriarchal values. So how we go on about targeting these kind of situations?
Pema, thank you for giving a most difficult question. I will not pretend to answer it, but just share some thoughts. The one thought I want to share that you made me think deeply about is about Indigenous men, because I also forgot to complete what I was saying previously, that of course the community and Indigenous women are in the front seat. But I wanted to say that there is, in terms of gender roles, there is no change without the men, because the gender roles are relational, are about relations. So the men have to change along with the women, you know. That is one comment, that the important role of men and boys, indigenous men and boys, of course, in any effort of that women will decide, you know, they wish to see some things better. They have a very big role to play. The other thing is this word that you used, pure indigenous cultures, pure indigenous cultures. And I want to say, what is pure? We like to ask questions like that because there is no ossification of cultures or freezing. You know, cultures are constantly changing. They are constantly changing in connection to nature, but they are also constantly changing because of our relations with other cultures or with culture changers within our community. This has been since antiquity, since always it has been the case. And if you do, you know, if we do anything, analysis of our food, even our names, you will see, and our languages, you will see how much we have borrowed from that one, and we gave to that one. You know, meaning this constant flow amongst us, right? Pema, you come from Nepal, and Cecilia from Peru, you know, and so on. And we are, and I come from Greece, and we share based on who we are, right? And we are in a seminar mode, and we are like sisters, and very frankly, we share. So there is no pure in that sense, because it has been changed already, whatever it was many years ago, it has changed already. Plus, it's changing right now as we speak. There is nothing static in it. So I want to say, and I want to stop really at the intergenerational element that you brought in. So the intergenerational is, okay, it's the possibility, you know, of the older generation to pass on to the younger generation. Okay, if they want to do that, they do. They try to do that somehow. Maybe not perfectly, they try. But when the younger generation receives it, it does not reproduce it exactly the same. I will again make this undermining comment, so to speak, this critical comment. You know, again, you know, my mother might have taught me to deal with the baby's cold like this, but I think I'm gonna add that, or not do it perfectly, or when I saw my mother being so tired because she was doing these things, I don't think it's worthwhile. I will cut corners at one point and choose something. So all I'm saying is that there is tremendous power, in my opinion. That's how I feel from experience of certain decades that I have in my age, that culture is, first of all, a huge power tool. It's huge. And it is in your hands. You are young. It's in your hands. It's also in my hands, although I'm older, you know, meaning it's an amazingly creative thing we can use. And I think that the youth, I have a thing about the importance of the youth, the freshness, the impatience, and the committed principles, because that's your life, that's your age, you know. We need that in our society. We need you to push for the things that you saw were better in grandma's time, or to correct some of the things that in grandma's time to make them a bit different now. You know, in other words, you have a very big position in the front seat. I really believe that, Pema, because, as young people, even if you say yes to your mother and father, during dinner, yeah, you're right, because you don't want to listen too much, that bother you. You think inside you and you feel in your heart. And when you are by yourself and, independent, you're going to do it as you have shaped and interpreted it. So that's the power. That's how I feel. And I feel in a certain way sad that mainstream feminists don't understand us like this, the power of culture. And they think culture is bad in general. That's stupid. I mean, for me, it's total stupidity to say something like that. And also the human rights people, experts and advocates who have not thought deep about that, who also send it off, So we have a job to do. That's why I made you this presentation on the women. Because I wanted to create for us to promote some thinking about this, because we will be put in the position of having to answer my colleagues. I have colleagues, human rights professors at Columbia, that ask me these questions. So we have to be able to answer them, What did Lucia ask? Let's see. Lucia is asking, how can we make this intergenerational dialogue? Because nowadays young people are more concerned about generating economics, more money, ideas imposed from the education they receive in the community. Yes, you are right. Well, I think that young people have many challenges in the world, not just nowadays, but in general, because they are at an age that they have to give themselves all the tools to make a living and to start their own family, all the tools. And that includes economic tools, of course. You have to survive, you have to eat, and your family has to eat. So you have that, and you have to be part, and you want to be part of a community. You want to, and part of your family, and to be, to have a loving relation, protected and protect your family, protect each other. So, but also you have, as I said, the strength, freshness, and impatience of youth, which if they are constructively used, you can make a lot of changes, because you are the next generation. Actually, you are the strong people now. It's not my age now. We are on the way out, you are the people coming or are in already. You have a lot of strength. And because indigenous cultures have been so strong, most, you have a strong, culture also in your hands as a wonderful tool of support, of change, of protection, all kinds of things. The best way you can use it, and for it can help you in life, your well-being in life. I see Brittany.
Sí, hermana, ¿cómo está? Buenos días.
Yes, sister, good morning. Let me turn my screen on. Okay, I wanted to go back to what my sister said previously about transferring the information from our older or more experienced sisters in terms of our culture to our young people now. But as you've said, we have a great challenge, and that is that it is the age when they are establishing their lives, maybe pursuing a university career or studies, who knows. And that's why what I see in my community is that young people are more focused on that and they don't have time to hear or know more about their culture, try to be leaders in that. And I have even been thinking that instead of working with young people who are completely busy with their personal objectives, I thought it'd be better to reach the schools, places where they can acquire that knowledge from a younger age in a space where they can receive a more in-depth education from the schools. So, and when they're younger and have more time. So I don't know whether we should start that intergenerational process with children and adolescents or youth, just young adults. So I've always been thinking about that. How can we work in that area, because it's quite a challenge.
I hear you so much, I'm thinking of that when I am with my students at Columbia University, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous young people in my class. How much time does the system, the demands on them in their education system at Columbia University, how much time does it leave them to develop and cultivate, what they're bringing as of from other cultures, whether it is their indigenous cultures, for example, or cultures, because there are many different cultures also in America. It's a settler colonial state, and it has many cultures, right? I consider that it is a very demanding and almost absolute system that is not good. I try to create, an atmosphere that the students feel that they're human beings, they're like part of my neighborhood, I'm not just a Columbia teacher that gives them a syllabus, but I wanted to say, Brittany, that where you asked, should it be from child and adolescence or should be later also? I think, first of all, that what we have been given as children and adolescents living in their families are almost, printed in our DNA. We have a lot of things we have taken, good things, some bad things as well, depending. And that's why I like very much the concept that I think our Indigenous brothers and sisters have sometimes used, plus others, that before you learn, you have to unlearn. In other words, you have to unlearn, you have to create a certain critical mind in whatever the regular education system gives you. I'm not saying you should, say, oh, Professor Elsa, you are telling us lies, or I'm not saying that, but we have to keep awake our mind, what is given to us in some very distinguished educational institutions as well, There are many kinds of human beings that are professors, and I think having indigenous cultures, which, as we were saying before, are strong, it doesn't mean that you have to be close to other things and other wisdoms. No, of course not. But you combine them and you take the best parts of them that you like. There's nothing bad about it. Human beings have used that. And also some non-indigenous persons take on some cultural elements of indigenous people that they respect, they're inspired by and that help them in their lives. So your question, Brittany, was very rich, but I think that coming from indigenous cultures and going, let's say, into a university system, educational system, I think you are well equipped philosophically, culturally, to be a critical receiver of whatever knowledge you are given. Critical mind is very important. And, you know, your strength, and one more thing, and I finish this, finding a network where you study, let's say in the town, city that you study, or in the university where you study, a network of other people who might be indigenous, non-indigenous, I don't know, that where you feel comfortable, safe, or similar, right? To, you know, discuss, to, you know, to critically present and discuss things. I don't know, does it help my answer? I don't know. Thank you for raising all this, very important. Yeah.
Professor, I don't know if you still have time to be with us, because I realized you said that you had another commitment, and
Yes,
we don't want to hold you to hold you if you do need to go. So if there isn't any other question, maybe you can give us your concluding remarks before you leave, if you have any.
My concluding remark is that I am very glad I'm with you every Friday. Even if I'm not giving a seminar, I'm with you because I get to know you through your comments. And I'm very happy that I still have some seminars to give you. I think I have 3 more. So I'm very happy. And because they're very deep comments that you share, you learn from each other and I learn from you as well. So it's like that we continue. And thank you for creating Fimi, Winnie, Cecilia, Joy, this very inspiring environment that we all feel safe to share, frankly, and with solidarity and sisterhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Elton. Thank you for being with us today. I'm sorry about the time change that got you unaware earlier on, but we look forward to seeing you again soon for the other sessions that we have planned with you. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day and all the best in your other engagements, and see you soon.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
So, sisters, so we'll continue a bit before leaving. And just before we continue, I don't know if Joy or Cecilia have anything to say before I can let you know what the next steps are. Anything, Joy or Cecilia? No? All right. Okay. No? All right. All right, thanks. So we're going to go into groups now, regional groups, because we need to work on our on the statements. So we're going to go into groups now for the next about half an hour to 40 minutes. And when we're in the groups, we will not come back to the main group. From the groups, we will leave. I mean, the Zoom meeting will be shut from when we're in the group. So we'll have about 40 minutes or so to discuss and to continue to build on the regional statements. So please do not leave, go into your groups and work on the statements. And then also just a reminder that next week on the 22nd, our class will be at 8 a.m. and not 8 p.m. as it has been for the last few weeks. So please take note of that the class will be at 8 a.m. Guatemala time. So for the sisters in Asia, Africa, the Pacific, please make sure that, because most of the times it's Thursday, so it will be on Wednesday for us on 22nd. So please take note of that. So to the session today, we will ask the technical team to please help us go into our regional groups, and then we can continue our discussions from there.
Winnie,
Hello.
Hello.
Erin, can you hear us?
Hello.
Okay. I'm bringing up the Google Doc. So the Google Doc has been, have you first of all had access to the Google Doc?
Yeah, I see, but I've not yet done anything.
Yeah, so because I sent it to everyone and I am yet to see input into the regional statement, which by the way, needs to be done by the 22nd. So perhaps you can let me know what your thoughts are, because I shared not just the statement alone, but I also shared with you a previous statement that you can use as reference. So please let me know what is happening. Unfortunately for the two of you, you're the only two that are here out of the 5 from the group, but we still need to move forward with the statement. So if you have access to it, please open it and you can start, even if it's just writing the topic and the beginning and the introduction part. And both of you will share with everyone else some of the things that you want to highlight in the statement. And then we can put those down as notes. So do both of you have access to it now? Are you able to open the Google Doc?
Yes, let me open.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, so please open it and then let's start inputting things. Let me know when you're there.
Okay.
Okay, I'm there, Winnie.
Irene, are you there? Hello?
Just a moment, please. I'll use this my phone.
Okay.
Let me look, it's taking time. to do that.
Sorry, Irene, I didn't hear you.
Hello, Winnie.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but your voice is a bit far.
Oh, I was saying, I was using my phone in the kitchen. So let me just, my laptop is taking time to open, but I've been trying to.
Oh, okay, you sound clear. So okay, so Maria, you can start to input the thing, or rather, this is, oh dear. So just a reminder that the statement doesn't have to be on the theme of the permanent forum. It can be on the 6 mandated areas. So you're free to choose where your issue lies. If your issue lies within the theme, then that's fine. If it lies within the 6 mandated areas, then that's also okay.
Okay. So I can start inserting the topic.
Yes, please. Yeah, you can start to input on the document. But what I wanted us, or what I wanted you to do first before you put it down on paper is share with us what issues you want to highlight on this statement, and now relating it to either the theme or the 6 mandated area.
Okay, the issue that I want to highlight is one of them is food insecurity, and also the issue of health.
What about them?
So food insecurity due to climate change in the community, there has been drought, and the community mostly depend on livestock, which have died due to drought. So they experience hunger. And also about health, they depend on, there is lack of water. They depend on the one river, the Wasonyiro River. So, and they use them with animals. They both share the water from the river. So sometimes you find they drink the water and they're affected in terms of health, and also access to, because of poor roads, they can't access to, and also the facility is far away, so it's very difficult for them to access health facilities. So also you find in terms of food insecurity, they don't have balanced diet. Yeah, you find their health becomes poor.
So
Yeah,
that
becomes
too.
poor, and also you find the also cases whereby they die because of hunger. Yes.
Okay. So where do those two issues that you want to highlight, where do they lie, in the 6 mandated areas or in on the theme that's led this year?
I think they lie on the theme, the permanent forum theme, and also the 6 mandated areas.
Okay. So what you'll do is what you've told us, put that in a paragraph, explaining what the issue is, who's being affected, and most importantly, what is your recommendation? So now, have you already, you've thought about the issue, you've explained what the issue is, but what is the, remember we said that in a statement, the statement won't mean anything if you don't have a recommendation.
Yeah.
So have you already thought of a recommendation? So
Maybe I
think about
it.
Yeah, think about a recommendation and who the recommendation is to. If it's about, say, food insecurity or food issues, do you want to address the recommendation to FAO? That's the agricultural, the UN Agricultural Food and Agricultural Organization. Do you want to direct it to IFAD? That's also an agency of the UN that deals with food. Who do you want? Because remember your recommendation has to be concrete, so that even if when it's being read and someone decides to take it up, the UN agency can decide to act on it because it's actionable. So what do you call up? What is your recommendation? You call upon the FAO, you call upon IFAD to do what? That would that would solve the issue that you have. Yeah. So you can just start to type your issue, and then think about the recommendation and then add that under your issue. Okay. Herma, thank you for joining us. We're looking at the statement. We started not too long ago. We're just looking at what issues each of you want to highlight on the statement. And Maria just shared with us what her issue is, and she will compile that into a paragraph and put it on the Google Doc that you all have access to. I don't know if, Herma, have you been able to open the Google Doc? Herma? Okay, so as we wait for Herma, maybe Irene, can you share with us what you want to highlight in the statement? Irene?
Hello, yeah.
Yes. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, we can't hear. Your voice is cutting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Me thought of doing something maybe on environmental violence.
Mhm.
Yeah, because if I look at what's happening maybe in my community, we have like sugar factory that's around there, and sometimes they release the gases to the environment, and it's really affecting people. And there's this biogas that they release, and we find it's affecting the health of people around there. Some of them are even turning to be blind or something. So I thought of maybe doing that. Yeah.
Okay, so where
Yes.
does your issue lie? Where does your issue lie? Does your issue lie within the 6 mandated areas, or does it lie,
Yeah, it lies on the 6 mandated
or
areas.
or does it lie within the theme?
It lies on the 6 mandated area. In one way or another, if you look at it, it correlates with the 6 mandated areas, because of the environmental violence, the health of people around there is being affected. The water, sometimes they release harmful substances to the rivers, and people still drink the water, so their health their health is affected. So yeah.
Okay. Also remember that the theme, I don't know if you know, the theme this year is actually focused on indigenous people's human health, sanitary and territorial health, and climate change. So both you and Maria are talking about, health, but in completely different aspects or completely different approaches, which is fine. Which is fine. Both of you are within the theme of the permanent forum, because both of you are talking about.
And then we share it in Google Doc, and we then appointed person for each team to summarize it. What do you think?
I think that would be a good thing to do at this moment, because we all have, I think we all have our own statements. And then after like a day or two, we can put them all together and make it short, because we only have 3 minutes for it.
Okay. Oh, yes, it sounds good. So you're saying one person will summarize each theme, right, after reading everyone's statement?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. So please feel free then to just pick up a theme. But sisters, also keep in mind that some recommendations are correlated. So let's say health and the environment, health and climate change again. Um, so you might not need separate recommendations in such situations, but anyway, I think it's best that we work on the statement uploaded real fast in the Google Docs so that I think then we'll be able to figure out how to structure it properly.
So let's settle the deadline for the statement, for each statement, for the individual statement from each organizations. And then after all the statement have been uploaded, and then we decided who's going to be summarize each thing.
Maybe tomorrow night at this time, because it's already 18 here in Asia, so we can all finish our statements by tomorrow night, and then the next day would be the summarizing for the single statement.
I do agree with that. What about the others?
Rima, please go ahead.
Uh, I also wanted to add like for me I wanted to also put some recommendations on the actual theme as well as on the health aspect from the perspective of indigenous women with disabilities. So should I be adding that in a single recommendation, or do I make like 2 to 3 recommendations?
Rima, can you please repeat your question? I'm sorry, my network, I lost you a little bit.
Sure. I just wanted to ask that how many recommendations can each of us provide, because I wanted to touch upon the main theme as well as on the health aspect, the health, that main theme, the other 6 areas like health. I also wanted to touch on health and the main theme both. So how many recommendations can I put?
Oh, it's all right. Put as much as you feel is important for you, and then we'll see. Maybe your recommendation could also be in common with someone else's. So then maybe we can club that later. So it's
Okay.
all right. Please feel free. All right. What I would suggest is, if once you're done summarizing the themes, I will help structure it. So, but I'll need to see. So just let me know anytime you're done with all of that. I'll definitely be there to structure it. See if some things should be added, some things can be combined. We'll try not to edit. We'll try not to delete any recommendation. But let's remember the time that will be given to read the statement, so that way let's maintain that equity as well. So we'll not have too much of recommendations from a country, maybe say for now, just please feel free to type, and then we'll see how to fit everything together. Who will take the charge of the final statement? Okay. Okay. So I think for now, let's discuss on who will summarize which theme. And then I will once you're done with summarizing, I will structure it and then send it back to you for reading it. And then once it's done, we'll agree in WhatsApp group, and then I'll send it to FEMI political team. They'll be coming on the 29th to give inputs on this particular statement. So then you will also have to decide who amongst you would like to read the statement on the 29th to the FEMI political team. So that would be, the in charge would be someone who will have to read that statement that day. So I leave that up to you to nominate someone. But I'll do the part where I'll be inserting your logos and all of that. So please make sure that, please send your logos to me, your organization's logos to me, to my email, and yeah, I'll have the final version for you. So maybe we have just about 13 minutes. Maybe we can discuss who would like to take which theme then for summarizing. Regina, that's what you suggested, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that sounds good, Doris. What about the rest? Okay. So just want to ask, are any of your organizations going to the permanent forum this year? Any colleague from your organization?
I think some from Tibtaba will go.
Okay, great. So they'll be there for the entire duration, Doris?
Yes, Miss Joy. I think Ellen will be going,
Okay,
and I don't know the others.
okay. That's good. Ask them to attend the FIMI side event with Human Rights Commission from Geneva. This year, FIMI will be having a side event on the General Recommendation 39 of CEDAW.
Oh yes.
So yes, I'll share the details a little later once our communications team are done drafting that. So, but it'll be nice if they can attend.
I think because of AIW, and they will be attending also. And of course, because we are closely working with FIMI.
Perfect.
Sorry, but I'm just going out of my hotel, so I may leave the session right now. Is that okay?
Yes, it's fine, Pema. Take care. You'll be with
Sure,
us on
thank you.
Monday though, right?
Yeah, right. No, I'm not sure because I think my flight is right on the time when we have our class, but I have to make sure
Okay.
about it. I'll inform on the group chat.
Okay. All
Sure.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pema. Thank you. Sisters, I think we can also leave if you don't have anything else to discuss. So just to be clear, we will be finishing our statements by tomorrow, right? Our individual statement. Is that what we agreed?
Yes, Miss Joy.
And then we do the summarizing on Monday.
Yes,
So
or
then
Sunday.
Sunday, okay. Monday is also fine.
Okay.
Because I think I'll just need a Tuesday to kind of go through it and help structure the statement. And then on Wednesday is the 22nd. Yeah, the 22nd we'll have to send it to FEMI political team. I keep saying team, FEMI political team. Yeah.
So our deadline is 22 for
Yes,
the
yes,
final statement. Okay.
for the final statement. So 22. By this time I will need to send it to them.
I have like a question because I I have seen like a glimpse of what Doris sent us on a WhatsApp group. So after we summarize the each statement, I think we need to because there are like Joy mentioned before, it was there was like the background on what we are why we are making the statement. I think we have to write that also, like summarize it all, and then become the statement each, and the law is the the state the statement, like the background of the statement, and then the statement of each thing. So who's going to do that?
Regina, it's fine. I can also do it. I can help with that introduction, giving the background and all of that. But yeah, I want someone to take the lead because this is a practice for you. So, please feel free if you have any ideas, just put it on, and then someone edits, and then someone, make it very interactive. If you don't agree with something that someone has written, you can just comment and ask them to, can you please justify this with data, or can you please justify this with a study, or can you please justify this, or not justify, but can you please has a recommendation on this been given before? So let's not make it too mechanical that way. Let's be interactive, even in the Google Doc. And then I think once we're interactive, we will get an idea of how we would like the statement to be. We'll get an overall vision for our statement. But for that, we need to communicate, and we need to start writing the statement. And even if I wouldn't understand something, I would leave a comment. I will leave a comment in the Google Doc, and then you can respond, and then I think that will automatically just lead us to having the background and the introduction place. But I think what's important here for us is to understand where we trying the overall vision for our statement with our different recommendations.
All right, thank you, Joy. And about the invocation. So I will inform
yes.
since we still have time. Like I will be busy from the 22nd actually till the 27th because of the annual meeting of the credit union, since I am the board, so I have to make the responsible report for all the last year's program. So I won't be able to do the invocation on 27th. I will attend the class, but I won't be really fully in the class, so and maybe I will be a little bit late. So I hope that somebody else can do the invocation on the 27th. I'm so sorry for the
Regina,
inconvenience.
Maybe
Regina, I
Anima
think
and
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I think mine is on 29th, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
So if you want to do it on 29th, so I can switch. I think that's not a problem.
That will be perfect.
Yeah, so cool. That's okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Anima. I think Doris had also mentioned that she'll not be free at this time.
Yeah, because I will
Thank
be on
you.
fieldwork for the whole week, starting this 24, and I really need to do it because of the networking of the National Indigenous Peoples Organization here.
Okay.
But I agree with putting it maybe in a single Google document, the final statement, and then we can all work together improving it. I mean, not just one person is the one assigned to do it, but we can all work together with the improvement of it. Because yeah, about the references and all, it would be better if to have more minds.
Yes. You're right, Doris.
Yeah, I also agree, but at the same time, I was thinking that if one person take the initiative to even make the changes, then I think it will be good. Otherwise, we all come and keep making changes, then I think that might be a little confusion at the end. So I don't know if that is a possibility or not.
Let's do one thing. Let's just start working, and then we'll see how it flows on Google. I'm sorry, I'm pushing. There's just 12 seconds left. We'll see the flow, and then we'll continue talking on WhatsApp to see who will do the finalization. Is that fine?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a
Yeah,
good
bye.
weekend.
Thanks. Yeah.
You too.
Thanks, Anima.
Have a good night.
Doris, Regina. Bye. Yeah, good night.
Night.